What is up, everyone? I'm Rusty, your local laboratory manic, and this is Landman EDH. Today, I wanted to make a video for a friend. We were discussing the new Witherbloom, the balancer card from the Strixhaven set. It's a powerful card, but they didn't really know which direction to take, and all kind of seemed blah to them. Well, we'll be tackling it today. I will come up with 4 ways to build around Witherbloom, all off the beaten path for him, of course. I'm using EDH Rec to determine what that beaten path is, what the average is, and we'll kind of stray away from it because sometimes, although EDH Rec is a great resource, sometimes you want something different. And this is typically how I build. Sometimes I take a commander or a concept and then build various versions of the deck to see which pathway speaks to me the most. So hopefully by the end of this, you, bud, will be able to find the deck for you. Let me read him real quick for those in the chat that don't know what he is. He is an 8 mana Golgari legendary creature Elder Dragon. Has affinity for creatures, meaning he costs 1 generic less for each creature you control, and then has flying and death touch. And instants and sorcery spells you cast have affinity for creatures, and it's a 5/5. Now, the obvious pathway is tokens, which of course we're going to be working with, but there's also some creature types that swarm the battlefield that could be a pathway to take as well. So let's go ahead and get into the decks. For this first deck, I want to show you how to take this token and Spellslinger strategy to the most extreme, with no permanents at all in the deck outside of your commander and lands. This is a strategy I actually play in a Simic build with Johnsy as the commander, and it's way more powerful than it first appears. Now, I'm going to break down the deck for you. This is the most annoying part of deck building. You got to get all the pieces together so it's a functional deck. Although I do build some of the jankiest jank, I do make sure that it is always functional. So, okay, deck breakdown for mana ramp. We have 14 mana ramp spells. Now, I define mana ramp as permanent mana, like mana dorks, mana rocks, or land tutors. I don't consider treasures or rituals in this category because they're temporary or unreliable, but you could throw them in if you wanted. Now, draw is a single instance of 3 or more cards or a repetitive instance of drawing 1 or more cards, and I put 12 in this deck. For removal, our play group, it kind of gets crazy. You need this. Now, removal is anything that nullifies a threat to me. Kill spells, exile, counter spells, bounce spells, transmogrify spells also fall into this category. For removal, I have 14 in this deck. For token producers, I loaded up with 31. Almost a third of the deck can make a token, and there are 29 different types of tokens you can make with this deck. And for lands, I got 38. I try to usually have between 36 and 40 lands, sometimes more or less, depending on the strategy. Now, let me make the case. I know you guys are clinging on to your doubling seasons. How dare I suggest a token deck without doubling season? Now, there's multiple benefits of having only instant and sorceries in the deck. The first being you aren't running artifacts or enchantments, so you can throw in a bunch of board wipes targeting those. Fade from History, for example, is a 4 mana green sorcery. Each player who controls an artifact or enchantment creates a 2/2 green bear creature token, then destroy all artifacts and enchantments. Creeping Corrosion is another one. It's a 4 mana green sorcery. Destroy all artifacts. Now, your opponent might almost 100% rely on artifacts as mana support, so this can really slow them down. And Pillow Fort decks are going to just wreck your deck because you're a token strategy, so you need to remove all their enchantments. Another reason this strategy is powerful is because you can cast a bunch of spells super cheap, usually 1 or 2 mana, depending on how many colored pips are in. And the more spells you're casting, the better storm cards get. And we have a few in this stack. Some even produce tokens. Hunting Pack is probably the best one. It's a 7 mana green instant. You create a 4/4 green beast creature token, and then, of course, it has Storm. Chatterstorm is another great one, especially for you evil squirrel players, or if you face squirrel players, you can out squirrel them. We do have a squirrel player in our play group, so you can out squirrel them with this. It is a 2 mana green sorcery. You create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token, and then, of course, it has Storm. Buyback is another super broken ability with Witherbloom. Lab Rats is my favorite, not only because I'm the laboratory maniac, but I feel sorry for. Look at the art. If you're watching instead of listening, look at that art. Why does that rat have wheels? What are they doing? What kind of experiments are they doing with these rats? And the other one has a bandage on his head. Oh my god. Okay. Anyway, Lab Rats is a one black sorcery as buyback for 4, which is an additional cost that will be reduced with Witherbloom. And buyback just says if you pay the buyback cost, instead of putting it in your graveyard, you put it back to your hand. And then it puts a rat token into play. It's a 1/1 black creature. So, assuming you have 4 creatures in play, one of them being your commander, you can play Lab Rats for 1 black, get a token, put it back to your hand, pay 1 black, get a token, put it back into your hand, and you could just keep going. Worm Calling is another one. It's an X and a green sorcery. Buyback for 2 and a green. Put an XX green worm creature token into play. Now, these are going to be pretty big because that X is also reduced. And we'll talk more about X spells here in a second, but it is reduced by Witherbloom. Lastly, this strategy lets you play stuff you normally would cut because you're trying to make room for your deck. Remember, you only have instants and sorceries to choose from. So if you're only playing 20 sorceries, that 21st one you're cutting. But in this deck, you get to keep it. Now, Mascot Exhibition is one of those spells that usually people cut because you only get 3 tokens for it. But it brings up a good point. If you play colorless instants and sorceries with your commander out and enough creatures, they are free to cast. So, Mascot Exhibition is a 7 mana sorcery lesson. It says create a 2/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token, and create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. So 3 tokens for possibly 0 mana. A fun win con no one seems to be playing for a deck like this. I think I saw it was in 10% of the decks is Vitalizing Wind. It is a 9 mana instant. It says creatures you control get +7/+7 until end of turn. If you're going to have an army of tokens, and this potentially can cost 1 mana to give all your creatures 7/7, your opponent is definitely going to lose to that. These next few cards fit in any of the decks, but I just want to kind of highlight them because they're generic. They don't fit all the themes. Diabolic Revelation is an X, 3 generic, 2 black sorcery. It says search your library for up to X cards and put those cards into your hand and then shuffle your library. Now, this with your commander obviously out will be 2 mana, search for hopefully 5, 6 cards. Who knows? It would be like the perfect draw spell. I did put this under the draw category because in our deck it kind of is. And this really shows the power of X spells in this deck. That's a strategy you can go down. I did not lean into it in one of these decks, but there are a few in. I'd be a fool not to put some of them in all the decks. Gelatinous Genesis is one of my favorites. It's an XX green sorcery. Create XX green ooze creature tokens. So let's say X is 5. You create 5/5/5 green ooze creature tokens. That's pretty powerful. If we have enough creatures, this can get out of hand real quick. For board wipes, there are some token based ones, which is pretty good. But there are 2 that are absolutely one sided and will hopefully only cost us 2 black mana to cast. Ingruk's Wake and Plague Wind. Both are 9 mana black sorceries that destroy all creatures you don't control. And Ingruk's Wake also destroys planeswalkers. And then the Plague Wind makes it so they can't be regenerated. But very powerful board wipes in our deck because we will most likely have at least 7 creatures. For this next deck, it is a burn deck, meaning we're trying to do damage to our opponent with non combat damage or drain their life in some way. For this deck, I have 14 mana ramp, mostly in the form of creatures. I have 9 draw spells, and I prefer 10 or more, but they're big draw spells, kind of makes up for it. Then you got 15 removal spells, which is higher because the burn damage, and this isn't just draining life, this is a lot of burn as well. Then that can be removal sometimes, especially for creatures. And then I have 20 elves. Yeah, spoiler alert, this deck has a lot of elves, mainly for token and mana packages. And then I got 11 burn spells, which doesn't seem like a lot, but most are X burn spells or swamp related burn spells. And then I got 37 lands. For burn, I have a lot of damage dealers, but life loss effects are obviously a great strength in black. But every single Witherbloom deck outside of my first instant and sorcery only deck that I talked about need Ancient Cellar Spawn. It's a 3 mana black enchantment creature. It's a horror. It says each spell you cast that's a demon, horror, or nightmare costs one less to cast. Then, whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast it is less than the mana value, target opponent loses life equal to the difference, and it's a 3/3. So if we cast a 7 mana spell for 1 mana, we do 6 damage, or make your opponent lose 6 life, I should say. Now, I was shocked when I went on the Witherbloom, the Balancer's EDH rec page. Ancient Cellar Spawn is not on there at all. That's crazy. Come on now, guys. Don't like doing damage to your opponent, I see. And with the reduction in cost and the added mana of our elves, X fireball effects will be ultra powerful for this deck. Squall Line is a green one, believe it or not. But be careful, it can hurt you too. It's an X and 2 green instant. It says it deals X damage to each creature with flying in each player. There are some burn spells that rely on having swamps. These usually will do X damage and gain you X life, where X is the number of swamps you control. Tendrils of Corruption targets only a creature, but Corrupt, being one of the better ones, can target any target. And of course, since we care about swamps, I threw in stuff that grab non-basic lands like Cabal Coffers and Orborg to add even more mana ramp to your X spells. So you got this, you got the elves that produce mana, and then you got your commander that reduces the cost. So X is going to be looking pretty nice. Speaking of mana, our elves will actually provide a few functions. Firstly, they'll swarm the board very quickly, and that's going to be like a replacement for a majority of the token strategy that most Witherbloom play. And you don't have to stick to elves for this strategy. I just picked elves because they're the most effective for you. You've seen how people play elves, you know. Now, this reduces the cost, of course, with Witherbloom out for your instants and sorceries. And then secondly, they tap for mana. As you know, elves do that. We've been playing for long enough. Then what I don't see people really focusing on is elves are connected to tokens. So you still get some token production in this deck. Liz Alana Huntmaster, if I'm pronouncing that right, is a 4 mana green elf warrior, and it makes elf warrior 1/1 elf warrior creature tokens whenever you cast an elf. And it's not the only one that does that. There's actually a few. I think one actually makes insect tokens, but still, it'll work for you because it's still making tokens every time you cast an elf. Damage doublers are usually reserved for red, but black has even better ones. I have 5 in this deck, and they're better because they include life loss as well as damage. Well, usually damage doublers only count damage. Now, Wound Reflection is a classic one. It's a 6 mana black enchantment. At the beginning of each instap, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. And funny enough, since we're in the swamp kind of theme here, Mind Sludge is kind of a mean card. And there's actually plenty of Swamp Matters cards you can throw in here that are instant or sorcery. But Mind Sludge is a 5 mana black sorcery. Target player discards a card from his or her hand equal to the number of swamps you control. And if you have Orborg out, that can get pretty brutal. Now, I really like this deck. An elf fireball kind of situation with Witherbloom is definitely off the beaten path. However, It gives you an opportunity to play strategy in a color that normally doesn't do it and lets you play cards you normally wouldn't see. Mind Sludge, for example. So this deck does have a lot of moving pieces. You could take out some, you could take out the Swamp Matters or replace the Else with Sorcerer, Incense, and Sorceries. But I think it all works together pretty well when I was playtesting it. This next deck is actually focused on casting stuff from the graveyard with Flashback. This is a good strategy, making many of our instants and sorceries reusable, increasing the value. For mana ramp, I have 11. Draw, I have 10. Removal spells, I have 9 in the deck. And those are slightly lower because I wanted to stick some more flashback or cards that benefit from flashback in the deck, which I have 19 total in the deck, and I have 30 lands. Now, funny enough, this is based around a deck. I don't know if you remember it, but you remember how I'm not going to name the story, but it had older decks for pretty cheap, and we would just buy one and play. I bought this one, the 1-2 punch from Odyssey, and it had a lot of the cards that I'm going to be showing you here in the deck that their whole focus was get like casting them, get a token, goes to graveyard, cast it from the graveyard, get another token. So it kind of double dips on the card. And with Witherbloom, usually the double dipping costs a lot. It's very mana intensive, but Witherbloom makes it great because, of course, it reduces that flashback cost. Now let's take a trip down memory lane together. Here are 7 of the cards from that deck that we'll be using. And back in the day, if a card had flashback, I don't know if you're looking at the screen, some people just listen, but there was a little graveyard symbol right next to the name of the card, and that's how you knew it had flashback. Now, you got Call of the Herd that makes a 3/3 elephant, Acorn Harvest that makes 2/1/1 squirrels, Grizzly Fate that makes a 2 bear tokens. You got Beast Attack that makes a 4/4 beast, Elephant Ambush makes a 3/3 elephant, Chatter of Squirrels make a 1/1 squirrel. But then you have Parallel Evolution, which is the best out of all of them, in my opinion. It's a 5 mana green sorcery that says for each creature token in play, its controller puts a creature token into play that's a copy of that creature. The flashback is 7 costs. So for 5 mana, essentially 5 green mana, you basically quadruple your token army on the field because you double it and double it again. And remember, flashback is an alternative cost from the graveyard, so it is reduced by Witherbloom. But there's also new cards that make tokens that have flashback. We're not just going back in the day. We do have some newer ones. Army of the Damned is probably one you've seen before. It makes 13 tapped 2/2 zombie tokens. Now, this one is hard to pronounce. It's from Final Fantasy. Gashal Greens, is that how you pronounce it? It's a made up word. It makes a 2/2 bird and it has landfall that gets boosted by +1/+0 whenever you play a land. Moan of the Unhallowed makes 2/2 zombies. Rise of the Ants is a weird one. I didn't expect that one to be from Innistrad. Do they have giant ants just roaming around on Innistrad, fighting the werewolves and vampires? It makes 2/3/3 insect creature tokens, and you gain 3 life. Shadow Beast Sighting makes a 4/4 beast token. Welcome the Dead draws you 2 cards, then you discard. Then you get X tapped 2/2 zombie druid tokens, where X is the number of cards put into the graveyard from the hand or the library. Then you got Breach of Branches, which makes you a 2/5 tree folk. It technically doesn't have flashback, but when you play a forest or a forest comes into play, you can return Breach of Branches from your graveyard to your hand and recast it. Most cards that care about leaving the graveyard, because that's like a theme, especially what was it? The Dragons of Tarkir had a huge theme about that. But usually creatures and lands they care about leaving, not instants and sorceries. But there are a few cards, one in particular that's really powerful, that care about any card leaving the graveyard. Amzu Swarm's Hunger. It is a 5 mana Golgari legendary creature, insect, shaman, has flying and menace. Other insects you control have menace. Then, whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, You may create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token. Then you put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the greatest mana value among those cards. Do this only once each turn, and it's a 3/3. So you essentially make double the tokens with Flashback, and then with Amzu out, you make another token, pretty good value. I will say this is probably one of the weaker versions of this deck in this video. It's more nostalgia for us. But if anyone's watching that's interested in it, I will say it's probably pretty fun. You could make it more broken, get more token doublers in there. You could make this way more valuable. This next deck is a Slime Against Humanity deck because it's a sorcery that makes tokens and you can have as many as you want. So, of course, Witherbloom makes a perfect home for it. And Golgari colors are basically the perfect Ooze colors. It is a 3 mana green sorcery. You create a 0/0 green Ooze creature token with trample. Put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is 2 plus the total number of cards you own in exile and in your graveyard that are oozes or are named Slime Against Humanity. A deck can have any number of cards named Slime Against Humanity in it. So, in terms of token production, it's not the fastest. We're definitely focusing on quality over quantity with this deck. But you also have ooze and +1/+1 counter synergies, which I think makes up for it in the end. The mana for this deck, the mana ramp is 12 total. Draw is around 9. Removal is 7. And I always find fitting 20 slimes against humanity harder to make room for the essentials. So the numbers are a little lower on that end. But slime against humanity. And another reason why that is sometimes like a mana ramp card also produces tokens. So it doubles that, if that makes sense. Slime Against Humanity doesn't do anything other than make a token. And then lands, we got 37 total lands. There's a lot of unique cards that pair with the slime cards. Cuna Q Gourmet has a strange card ruling that interacts with Slime Against Humanity. Now, it is a 3 mana green legendary creature. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus a 1/1 green frog creature token is created instead. You can pay 2, sack a frog, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It's a 2/3. So, as you can see, it's a replacement effect. So, it uses the word instead. Instead of making a 0/0 ooze with counters, you make that ooze with counters, but you also get a +1/+1 frog with the same amount of counters on it. So, technically, the frog will be stronger than your ooze because it has a base power and toughness 1, while your oozes are 0/0s. I even threw in a few tutors to get him out. I wouldn't say he's a secret commander or anything, but he basically doubles your Slime Against Humanity cards, which is pretty good. AV Progenitor Ooze is another great card because you're going to be casting those Slime Against Humanities for 1 mana if you have your commander out. So you can get your storm count pretty high. Now, this ooze is a 5 mana green legendary creature as Storm. It isn't legendary if it's a token. And then when it enters the battlefield, it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it for each other ooze you control, and it's a 2/2. Even some of the removal is ooze related. Convert to slime, I put in each deck actually, just because it's good, especially with cost reduction. It's a 5 mana Golgari sorcery. Destroy up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target creature, and up to 1 target enchantment. Then it has Delirium. Then, if there are 4 or more card types in your graveyard, you create an XX green ooze creature token, where X is the total mana value of permanents destroyed this way. So that can get pretty big. Speaking of large oozes, you got slime molding. It's an X and a green sorcery. You put XX green ooze creature tokens onto the battlefield. Now, these are going to be pretty big tokens. We talked about how X spells are good in this deck. I almost wanted to put some populate cards in here, but it doesn't really work well with Slime Against Humanity. But populating these cards, these oozes, would be pretty good. Lastly, the same name cards are great in this deck, like they are with any deck that lets you have any number of cards. Spellweaver Helix, it lets you imprint 2 sorcery cards in your graveyard, and then when you cast something with the same name, you can cast one of the copies for free, then one of them printed cards for free. So it doubles our Slime Against Humanity, which is pretty nice. Thrumming Stone, now that is a combo piece in most same name decks. It's a 5 mana legendary artifact. It says spells you control have Ripple 4, so when you play it, you reveal the top 4 cards, and then you get to play for free any card with the same name. You cast it, which ripples itself, so it keeps rippling and rippling and rippling. Now, the number of slime in the deck is only 20. So Ripple isn't going to go off like crazy, like in a Relentless Rat or Rat Colony deck where they play like 30. I would say you would need at least 25 to 30 to have it to be a really reliable combo. But like I said, I got some tutors in here and it can still get you the Thrumming Stone if that's what you want. I hope that was helpful for you. And if you have any questions about it, just text me. Now, for those that I don't know in real life, thank you so much for watching this tutorial on how to bore your friends with deck ideas. No, I'm just kidding. Now, quick shout out to my paid patrons, Brooke, Wolf, Brody, Who's Neil, Gutari, and Chris. I appreciate your support. Check my Patreon account out if you're interested in additional content or need deck help. There's free and paid tiers, of course. Now, comment below if you think I should include any cards in these decks for my friend. Obviously, that will be helpful to him. Deck links will be down below. And until next time, guys, I'll be seeing you.